Few games have felt like more of a rite of passage than Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. My first few ventures into the Souls genre were Elden Ring, Lies of P, and Bloodborne. But according to my friends who are also into these games, I had apparently done nothing yet. Sekiro is next level, bro. Or, it's the hardest game ever made. Having completed the game, would I say these claims are true? Yes and no. It does sort of feel next level in a way of intensity with how fast-paced the combat system flows. On the other hand, I wouldn't say it's the hardest game ever made. It's really about the same as the other games of the genre. You figure out what the game is mechanically asking of you, and you learn along the way through trial and error. Souls games have a way of breaking you down and building you back up, and the reward is a feeling that is yet to be touched by any other style of game. So if you've heard all the horror stories of the big bad Sekiro, but you still have the itch to give it a try, this video will give you a foundation to build on and become the ultimate shinobi. F what you heard, you can play this game. The first mechanic the game opens up with is a taste of the stealth system. Although it is not the most in-depth system, it will absolutely play a huge part in helping you make your way through the increasingly difficult areas. The very beginning acts as a tutorial to show you that you can crouch in tall grass, crawl underneath houses and other small spaces, scale ledges, and grapple to rooftops. In areas full of patrolling enemies, you almost always have several routes you can take to thin the herd and make your next fight that much more manageable. You may not be able to stealthily delete every enemy in the area, but I like the odds of squaring up with 2 enemies rather than 6 at once. Survey the area and look for strong enemies you can possibly defeat with one silent killing blow. This even goes for mini bosses for a massive upper hand in the fight. Try to find a vantage point and get the drop on them, eliminating one of their 2 or 3 death blow meters. This will often cut the fight with these bosses or elite enemies in half, making the fight with these extremely formidable foes tremendously less daunting. Also, while you're creeping about, keep an eye out for eavesdropping opportunities that will give you hints on boss weaknesses, hidden item locations, and more. You will have a central hub called the Dilapidated Temple throughout most of the game, and that location will serve you many uses. Here you will meet a few NPCs that serve a crucial role in your permanent improvement as you acquire new items. The Sculptor will craft you new prosthetic tools when you find and bring him the corresponding item needed for crafting. You will find the loaded shuriken useful for dogs or long-range type enemies, but I highly suggest getting the shinobi firecracker as soon as possible. You'll find a merchant in a tent at the top of a narrow mountain that sells an item called Robert's Firecracker. Purchase this item and take it back to the Sculptor, and he will turn this into the shinobi firecracker. You will find this tool very useful for opening up bosses for attacks or crowd control. This will come in great use in the first major boss fight of the game, so with this unlocked early, you will have the slight edge you need to prevail. Another useful NPC at the Dilapidated Temple will be Emma, who is the doctor figure of the game and inventor of the healing gourd. Bring her gourd seeds you find hidden across the world to increase the charges of your healing gourd. You will need all the healing you can get to see yourself through this brutally challenging masterpiece of a game. The game does a great job of introducing its combat if you choose to partake. Hanbei the Undying is an NPC at the Dilapidated Temple that will offer you risk-free combat training and will offer new drills as you acquire new shinobi skills. As a new player, you should absolutely not ignore these opportunities to get yourself accustomed to how each mechanic of the combat feels when executed properly. Spar with Hanbei until you feel comfortable parrying his attacks. When you get into a groove with the parry, The vast majority of the rest of the game is just learning the timing of each enemy's movesets, although still challenging and satisfying. For a perfect parry, you'll want to hit the block button just before an attack would be about to hit you. The timing feels tight and rewarding, but in my opinion, the grace period for a perfect parry is more than some other games of the likeness. Parrying will be extremely important throughout the game, especially for many boss fights. Not only is it important to attack and deal health damage and posture damage, but you can also build up their posture meter through perfect parries. With some bosses, these are the only openings you get for certain segments. If you master the parry mechanic, you will see yourself through Sekiro. Shinobi skills are obtained by gaining experience and acquiring skill points to spend on the said new abilities. The first one you want to unlock to save yourself a lot of potential headache is the Makiri counter. This will allow you to easily counter enemy thrust attacks that, in the case of not having this ability, will wreck your shit. This is great against spear enemies and does a ton of posture damage, so get acquainted with the ability by training with Hanbei and you'll essentially have everything you need to tackle any enemy of the game at this point. In addition, you'll unlock various different sword arts giving you an array of special attacks such as Whirling Blade, a powerful attack that's great for dealing big damage to one enemy, or if you find yourself surrounded and need a get off me type attack. You'll find great depth in the combat system by utilizing these various techniques to your preferred playstyle while encouraging replayability. One thing that most definitely sets Sekiro apart from other Souls-likes is the amount of mobility the wolf possesses. With no stamina meter being present, you can sprint around until your heart is content, even during battle. This particularly comes in handy against non-human enemies. You'll encounter a handful of bosses that seem to never stop charging at you, but if you keep circling them with sprint, you should remain untouched. This gives you some breathing room as well to study your enemy's attacks and spot openings when they are vulnerable. You should absolutely keep aggression at the forefront of your mind, but sometimes going toe-to-toe isn't an option at all times. Many bosses will offer a quick window of opportunity to use your grappling hook to close in for an open attack, usually after a charge of some sort. Keep an eye out for the green emblem above their head indicating a grapple. Shinobi arts will increase the effectiveness of the attack after grappling. Sekiro is a fast game meant to be played as so. Standing around will often lead to taking damage, so use the gift of swiftness that you are given. I'd like to briefly go over some of the various consumables you will acquire throughout your journey in the lands of Ashina. You'll find an assortment of sugars, powders, and medicines that will grant you different buffs and relief status ailments. For example, a common item you will find is Osco's Sugar, which will give you a boost of attack power for an amount of time. I didn't personally use many of these items throughout my journey, but a few times they did come in handy. I could tell you every item in effect until it sounds like gibberish, so I'd rather just leave this topic with this advice. As you acquire new items, take the time to go to the menu and read what it does. You may reach a point where one of these items could serve you extremely useful. I just wouldn't go using a bunch of buffing items on your second or third attempt of a boss. Once you have a real idea of what you're up against and gain a knowledge of all the threats you are facing, then I would consider using some of these items to give you the edge to prevail if you find the encounter particularly tough or the boss uses status effects against you. Just a good practice to keep all the items at your disposal in the back of your mind. I don't know about the rest of you, but the currency system took me a few moments to get a full grasp of. It was just a tad bit confusing to me as to how the coin purses work and how you should utilize them properly. So when you die, you lose half of your XP and money. XP goes towards spending your skill points, and money, or sen, is arguably more important because it's responsible for getting you more gourd seeds, prayer beads, and new prosthetic tools to bring to the sculptor. You're inevitably going to die quite a few times, so potentially you could lose so much precious coin at any given moment. That's where the coin purses come into play. You basically pay just a little bit of interest to stow away your hard-earned dough without the risk of it being lost on death. Let's say you have 120 coin in total and you come across a merchant selling light coin purses. Those will cost 110 coin each, but it counts as 100 coins stowed away ready for use when you really need it. Same for the heavier coin purses. You'll pay just a bit extra, but the larger sum will be kept in your inventory until you are ready to use it. I would recommend not using any of your coin purses until you see a gourd seed or prosthetic tool component at a merchant to lower the risk factor. Once you go to your inventory and use the coin purse, the money will go back to being spendable but also able to be lost on death. Spend and invest smart and you'll have no problems. I wouldn't worry too much about buying consumables because they are littered throughout the world. So save up and buy that good stuff when you see it. Presented as sort of a curse the wolf must deal with is the ability to resurrect from death during battle. The catch is it sometimes comes with consequences each time you use it to a certain degree. When you die, you have a chance to come back with what's called unseen aid, which will allow you to not lose half of your XP and sen. However, the more you resurrect and die, you'll be faced with a disease called dragon rot being spread throughout the world. This causes NPCs to become noticeably sick and will no longer be able to continue with an active or potential quest. Dragon rot will also lower your chances of receiving unseen aid. This will happen from time to time, but all is not lost. Emma will request you to bring her a blood sample of someone suffering from dragon rot, and after you do this, you will soon be able to use dragon blood droplets, which are limited items that will wipe the world clean of dragon rot. Don't get too stressed out if you begin seeing the effects of this sickness, but I'd suggest only using resurrection when you know it's a winnable situation. Don't waste it on the first couple of attempts of a boss, but only when you've learned their moves and have them on the brink of death. I will say this with every Souls-like guide, and that is to explore slowly. As before mentioned, Sekiro is a fast-paced game in terms of flow of combat, but when you clear an area, it is imperative that you fully explore your surroundings. You could break crates to find a hidden crawl space containing a valuable item, or even wall hug a secret panel opening a hidden chamber. You'll find most of your prayer beads and gourd seeds by doing just this, and it's so important to feeling that steady climb of progression and power. The levels are so deceptively dense and have a ton of verticality to them. Look over cliffs for ledges or grappling points and you just might find a path to an entire new area. Revisit areas and always chat it up with NPCs, always exhausting all the dialogue for potential hints, items, or side quests. See all the sights and absorb them as they should be. The game is undoubtedly gorgeous and seeps atmosphere. Take your time when you have a breather and really dig in and see every nook and cranny the game has to offer, because it's almost always greatly rewarded. During my time with the game, I had a few roadblocks and I looked up some guides, and many of them had you sprinting around bosses, only attacking at the cheesiest opportunities. Even bosses I felt totally stuck on, I tried these methods and found them downright not fun and out of element for what the game was trying to present to you. As I mentioned before, with non-human enemies, it would be extremely useful to use your mobility and get some separation, but when it comes to the sword battles, yes, you still use mobility for a quick breather or assessment, but you'll find the game so much more enjoyable and rewarding when you find yourself actually standing your ground and parrying every attack as you learn the patterns. When you accept that death will be a part of the game no matter what, it won't feel as frustrating. Every encounter, whether you live or die, is a learning experience, and you will improve with a bit of patience. The final boss probably took me over 40 tries, but by the time I had that one go when everything felt like it was clicking and I was firing on all cylinders, ready for whatever he had to throw at me, I realized this was one of the absolute greatest sword fights ever depicted in gaming. This goes for several fights throughout the game where you may feel weak and hopeless in the first few encounters, but with the right attitude and a few reps, you will find yourself facing that formerly overwhelming force as a worthy adversary who is capable of becoming more skilled with every skirmish. You will find yourself becoming not only the biggest threat in the lands of Ashina, but a true master shinobi. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.